Welcome back everyone to Racing Reviews. Today we are continuing our journey, taking a look back at the Formula 1 2020 season. So far we have done McLaren, AlphaTauri, Racing Point, and today we're talking about the big dogs, your Formula 1 2020 world champions. Of course, it's Mercedes. It's safe to say 2020 was another sublime season for the Silver Arrows, claiming both the drivers and constructors title for the 7th year in a row. Their domination, it's ridiculous but thoroughly deserved. This year with the brand new DAS system aiding the team just that little bit more, they were untouchable in all but 2 Grand Prix this year. Turkey, treacherous conditions, a brand new surface, Racing Point and Red Bull, I think were the 2 best cars on that particular day. Hamilton and Mercedes still coming out on top in Turkey. Also in Abu Dhabi, Red Bull and Verstappen, the ultimate package in the final race of the season. But hey, 15 out of 17 races, that's pretty good going for any team on the Formula 1 grid. There were 2 other races Mercedes weren't able to win this year. The Italian Grand Prix, Pierre Gasly claiming victory, whilst Mercedes, they made a bit of a blunder, calling in Lewis Hamilton into the pit lane when it was closed. Big no-no from the FIA. Hamilton slapped with a penalty. Bottas really struggled to establish himself on that particular day. And also, who can forget that 70th anniversary Grand Prix with Verstappen taking victory, with Mercedes having tyre issues, and the Sakhir Grand Prix. We'll talk about that one a little bit later on. But as we head over to our tier list, before we jump into our analysis of our 2 drivers, or 3 drivers in the case of Mercedes, the team itself. So far on our tier list this year, we've got McLaren and AlphaTauri in the great section. Racing Point so far are our lowest team in the good section. Mercedes, it's gotta be the first team in the legendary status. What a season. Another Constructors and Drivers World title, 7 in a row. A year to remember, both on and off the track. And just for that stunning black livery in support of the BLM movement, that on its own probably deserves legendary status. Will we see that next year? We're not too sure, but a year I think everyone will remember as a Mercedes dominant season. Right, the good bit, the bit I enjoy, the bit you all want to see, analysis of our drivers, starting off with our head-to-head, our 2 main boys at Mercedes this year, Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. And unfortunately for Valtteri, he did struggle to live up to the standards of Hamilton this year. The qualifying battle, 11.5 in Lewis's favour, 1.68 an average of pole position for Lewis Hamilton this year. Bottas's average, 2.29, so an average of P2. In the race head-to-head, a very similar story, 12.4 in favour of Hamilton. The points, I think, is where it gets a little bit ridiculous. Hamilton, 347, Bottas 223, so over 100 points in front, but Valtteri is closer in the standings to 8th place Charles Leclerc than he is Lewis Hamilton in terms of point difference. I think that really highlights just how good Hamilton's season was this year and how Bottas's season didn't quite go to plan. Of course, both of them, their best result in qualifying and the race was P1. However, Lewis was able to pick up 11 Grand Prix victories, with Valtteri only claiming 2 over the course of this year, the same as Verstappen, only 1 more than Sergio Perez and Pierre Gasly. And I tell you what, before I started recording this video, I thought these numbers were much better for Valtteri Bottas. I thought his season was okay, I didn't think it was dreadful, but looking at it now, I'm not too sure. Let's talk about Valtteri while we're starting off there. What went so wrong this year? Hamilton in a class of his own. Valtteri starting the season off so strongly with that victory in Austria. However, after that race, highlights of Valtteri's season are few and far between. That victory in Sochi will always be tainted by that questionable penalty Lewis Hamilton received for not starting his race practice start in the right position. Very harsh penalty given to Lewis on that particular day. That cost him a chance of the victory. Yes, Valtteri performed brilliantly in Imola in qualifying. However, a bit of Ferrari finding its way under his car in the opening stages of the Grand Prix threw his pace in the bin, I think it's fair to be said, and never really had a fair chance of taking the fight to Hamilton. But with those highlights aside, I think Valtteri's biggest issue in 2020 and what he has to work on most for next year is converting those Saturday performances into race performances. He was nip and tuck with Hamilton this year. Very rarely was the gap in qualifying over 1/10 of a second, which proves Valtteri, when he's on it, he can be on it. But having that consistency in the Grand Prix, I feel, is something he was lacking a little bit this year. And if he wants to take that fight to Hamilton next year, he's going to have to improve massively in that department. For Hamilton, another year of greatness, claiming that 7th world title, also claiming the record for most amount of victories in Formula 1, continues to smash the record of pole positions. Can this man be stopped? It doesn't look like it at the moment. 11 victories in a 17 race season. That victory in Turkey, where he claimed that world championship in those awful conditions. I don't believe he had the best car that day, but fought his way through the field magically. What a drive. For me, one of the drives of the season. Hamilton in Turkey that day. Dominant victories in Spa, Spain. Who can forget that race at the British Grand Prix? A record-breaking victory at home for Lewis Hamilton. Wrestling that Mercedes all the way through that final lap with a puncture. The tyre almost had nothing left on it when he crossed the line. So many iconic moments from 2020 for Hamilton, and fair play to him. Thoroughly deserves it. A mega year for the British driver. Can he make it 8 titles next year? You'll have to wait for my predictions video. However, if Mercedes can produce a car anywhere near as competitive as this season, I think he'll be okay. But before we jump into our tier list for the Mercedes drivers, we've still got one more to talk about. Because for the first time in his Formula 1 career, Lewis Hamilton did not compete in every single race in a Formula 1 season after contracting COVID-19 for the Sakir Grand Prix. And as such, he needed a replacement. Mercedes needed a replacement. And obviously, they called on their star of the future, George Russell. Just thinking about it now makes me smile. A golden opportunity, grabbed by the scruff of the neck from George Russell. In a car he was too big for. A team he was unfamiliar with, qualifying just 0.002 of a second behind teammate Valtteri Bottas. A win that should have been his. Criminally taken away, not once, but twice during the Grand Prix. But that performance was proof enough. Russell can afford to wait for his first podium, can afford to wait for his first victory. Because in that evening in Sakir, Russell proved he has the potential to be a race winner. Not only a race winner, but a world champion. And on that performance alone, he deserves to be in that Mercedes next year. I even think this year, but I can afford to wait a year. Magic performance from George Russell in Sakir. And on that note, we will move over to the tier list, the bit I love so much doing in this series. So far, we've got drivers a little bit all over the place. Sergio Perez, the only driver to have achieved legendary status in 2020. We've got Pierre Gasly, the Gasman, and the Hulk in great, both of them having mega moments this year. Good, we've got Sainz, Lando Norris, and Lance Stroll. And our only average performer so far is Danny Kvyat. But for Mercedes, I've gone a little bit wild. Maybe not harsh enough in some cases, but I've gone with this. Lewis Hamilton, of course, in his 7th World Championship year, legendary status. This will always be remembered throughout Formula 1 history. I have also gone with George Russell's Mercedes performance to be in legendary status. Don't worry, Russell will also be in here for his Williams performances, a separate character, separate icon, if you will, and we'll discuss that, of course, in the Williams video a little bit later on. However, judging that one performance in Sakir, I think will always be remembered. I think it was legendary enough that in 10 years' time, we will remember the first time George Russell stepped into a Mercedes at short notice in a car which wasn't built for him, that he had never driven before. He drove the socks off it. He should have won legendary status for George Russell and his one race at Mercedes, and Valtteri Bottas put him in average alongside Danny Kvyat. 2 wins, only one more than Gasly, only one more than Perez, in what was one of the most dominant Formula 1 cars of all time. I can't put it in good. I certainly can't put it in great, and maybe average is a little too nice. But I'll save him the despair, because there were very few crashes, very few silly moments, just those wins that were missing. Second in the championship is the bare minimum. He did that. So I think average is the right place for Valtteri Bottas. But next year, certainly, if he wants any chance of staying with the Silver Arrows, has got to do a lot better than 2020. But as always, let me know your thoughts in that comment section down below. Where would you put each driver on the tier list? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'll be back tomorrow discussing the 2020 season of Alfa Romeo before on Wednesday the return of transfer talk. Very much looking forward to that over the next couple of days. So of course, if you are new, feel free to subscribe. Hopefully you can join the team for 2021. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.